Waiting for everything to kick in. All right, here we go. Hey, thank you for listening to the Chuck Bryant Show here live on the WOTG Radio Network and WOTG TV. On the line with us today is a lady that has been around country music for many, many years and so many great number one hits in the years that she has been doing music. And she's got a latest project out. Her 40th anniversary, and we're going to be talking to her about that. And there's something about a Christmas dog, and we'll get into that. I'd like to introduce you to Miss Lacy J. Dalton. And it's funny that we're in Dalton, Georgia, and we're interviewing you, Miss Dalton, here on the phone today.
Well, my home place over there in Dalton, Georgia.
Have you ever been?
How are you this morning? It's great to be on the phone with you.
Great. Have you ever been to Dalton, Georgia?
I don't recall details about it, but I bet I have. It seems like I've been there.
It's right.
I went down to Georgia to see some producers one time, and I think they were right around where you are.
They could have been, because around this area has a lot of history, especially with all the history between Chattanooga and, with the Civil War and the Indian Nation, how the Cherokee Indian Nation left this area back in the 1800s. But I remember one time hearing Jerry Reed tell a story about how he had an interview, or they were doing the song. Elvis was going to record his little guitar man, and he was all the way down. I think he used to live in Savannah or somewhere, and he got the call to go play with Elvis Presley on the record that was the U.S. Mail. And Jerry talked about how he left and was flying through Chattanooga to get up to Nashville to help record that album. So cool.
Wow.
Well, tell us about your 40th anniversary.
Well, we wrote a song with my longest friend, and I sent it down to a friend of mine in L.A. who was a kind of a famous criminal attorney, and he didn't listen to the record for a while because I had changed names. I'd gotten married since I'd seen him, and my name at that time was Jill Byram, my maiden name, and my married name was Jill Croston. And he didn't recognize the name, so it took him about 6 months before he was shaving one morning and decided to put this record on, and as soon as he put it on, he recognized my voice. And he called me up and he said, I'm coming up there. I got a jet. I'm going to fly up there. I'm going to get you. You're going to come back down here, and you're going to make a CD. You're going to make a demo with some of the best players in Los Angeles. And that is exactly what happened. I made a CD with the folks like Billy Joe Walker and John Hobbs and some of the really greatest people, the Billy Graham, who was Glenn Campbell's band leader and a wonderful bass player, and he was on that session. He was actually the leader of that session. And we got a CD, we had a album made, and a demo made, and we sent it to Nashville, and we had offers from every record company down there, and even Mick Jagger's record company offered me a record deal on the strength of a song called Crazy Blue Eyes. Okay. And that song went on to win me the Best New Vocalist of the Year for the Academy of Country Music. And I went on then to be at CBS Records with the great Billy Sherrill, who discovered George Jones and Tammy Wynette and Tanya Tucker and Charlie Rich and a lot of, David Allan Coe and Johnny Paycheck and just everybody. Wow. And he was Ray Charles' producer till about the end of his life. And I actually think that I may be wrong, but it seems to me that Billy was originally from Georgia.
I think you're right. I think he was down around the Atlanta area. If I'm not mistaken, I've heard his name quite often.
Well, he at that time was the biggest thing in country music. He had the biggest stars, and he wrote songs with those stars. Yeah. Like Tammy Wynette with "Stand By Your Man," and he wrote "Almost Persuaded" with her. I don't know if he wrote "Stand By" with her. I can't remember, but they did a lot of writing together. Oh, and wow. Of course, he was George Jones' producer, clear, I think, to the end of his life, and Ray Charles' producer. And he was an absolutely wonderful man, and he gave me a great start in country music. And I had a lot of um, I made a lot of records in Nashville, and then I had grown up in a country music family. My family all played um, guitar, and my dad played all the stringed instruments, and my mother sang, and my sister played keyboards and sang and wrote songs. And so when I was 18, I finally picked up a guitar, but I strayed from the flock. I was crazy about folk music. I loved Joan Baez and Judy Collins and Bob Dylan and artists like that. And my father was horrified. It was just like, oh, what is wrong with you? Why do you like those minor chords that are so depressing? Why don't you sing things like "Give me 40 acres and I'll turn this ring around"? And and so then, after a while, I was working at the Bloomsburg State Fair, which is a huge fair, like as big as the Minnesota State Fair, and I was selling jewelry under the grandstand for Big Joe Ryan from Philadelphia. And I looked across the way, and here was this long-haired hippie guitar player selling psychedelic posters. And I ran off with him to California and formed a psychedelic rock and roll band. And really, it was the Outlaws who brought me back to country music. It was Waylon and Willie and Charlie Daniels and the boys.
Oh my goodness. Oh my
And
goodness.
so when I got back to Nashville, Billy Sherrill said to me, well, he said, you're an outlaw. And he said, and your name does not, nobody can even pronounce your name. It was, at the time, it was Jill Croston was my married name. He said, people don't know. Jill's okay, but nobody can remember Croston or Cruxton or whatever the heck they are. You need to get a name that sounds like an outlaw. And so that is how Lacy J. Dalton was born. In 1979, we released this Crazy Blue Eyes, and it was on permanent rotation in most radio stations for about 20 years. It was really a big, long-lasting, wonderful song, and the best thing about it was that I'd written it with my longest friend, who I've been best friends with since we were 7 years old. Mary McFadden was my friend, and it was such a magical thing to write a song together that went so far and did such
Right.
a great job. And then we went on, of course, to have we had a second CD called, the first one was called 16th Avenue, and our first one I think was called Lacy J. Dalton, and then we had Hard Times and 16th Avenue, which was a huge, huge record and became an anthem for the songwriters in Nashville. God bless the boys who make that thing is still on permanent
That's-
rotation in a lot of radio stations
Matter
today.
matter of fact, we have an oldies radio station,
Do
and
you?
yeah, and we haven't released it yet because of we want to make sure that the time is right to come out. Cause a partner of mine, me and Marty Smith. Marty Smith is a contemporary Christian country radio station, and he's out in Durango, Colorado, and we're fixing to release an oldies radio station, and we've been collecting the oldies music, and I know that I know I got quite a few of your songs in there, and when I
Well, I'll
started
bet
going,
you have. I'll bet you have Hard Times and Hillbilly Girl with the Blues and Wild Turkey and Everybody Makes Mistakes and Taking It
and
Easy and all
every
those.
and you know what, last night when I was, like I said, when I was doing my research, because I always like to do research, I go to Wikipedia, I read up on the stars, make sure that I know who their music is, and I listen to some music because it has been in the realm. I've been in gospel music for about 6.5 years, and I've been doing this, and now that we're crossing over into uh, like with Charlie Daniels and yourself and some other artists that we've interviewed, we're going back to the times when I was growing up, and when your songs that you were talking about here earlier was out on the charts. I remember them. I remember when, and I was sitting here thinking last night, and I'm like, wow, I remember that. And then I started remembering songs that were out on the top 40 when Casey Kasem was around and when they did the country charts and stuff like that. And you're going back, wow, I wonder where this person's at and that person at. And, your mind's going and stuff. And I was trying to remember one song. It was called The Matador. And I never can remember. And then last night, Sylvia's name popped up, and I have thought about her over the years. Where is she at?
Well, she's alive and well, and she is doing great. We just both were in 2000, I think 17. We were inducted into the Country Music International Hall of Fame together, and it was really great to see her. I hadn't seen her in years, and Paulette Carlson was there from Highway 101, and she got inducted. And Gary Morris was there. A lot of people from my class, were there,
Yeah.
getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, and we just it was a wonderful to see everybody, and everybody's doing really well. I was surprised. Everybody looks really good, and people are all still working. Just because we disappear from a lot of when you leave a major label and you become independent, everybody thinks you're dead because you don't have that huge promotion behind you.
Right.
The thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and all the TV shows and stuff like that. And really, country music has become, it's changed. You pretty much have to be a model, and you pretty much have to have a lot of money behind you to even get anywhere in it.
Well,
Or some, but you've got it's a different type of thing now, and it's really pretty much pop music, I think, the new
well,
country.
that's somebody was telling me, when you look back and I'm going back. I'm 52 years old, and I grew up
Why, you're
in.
barely wet behind the ears.
I know that. I know that. That's what they keep. That's what they keep telling me.
Yeah, don't you never think if you ever think about the numbers, it's going to freak you out. Don't do it.
Well,
Forget about it.
but I grew up in that era that when mom and dad was listening to, uh, here's my thing. I grew up listening to Patsy Cline, and Daddy was spinning the 45s like crazy with Roletta Lynn and Patsy Cline, and I grew up listening to Patsy Cline. I was devastated in like the mid 70s when I found that she wasn't around, because I asked Mom one time, I said, when Patsy Cline comes to town, I want to go see her. And Mom says, you need to sit down. And I go, what did I do? And she goes, Patsy Cline, son, has been dead since the early 60s. And I, what? And it's like it devastated me, because I always like to listen to her. And there, you got Roletta Lynn, Tammy Wynette, George Jones, and then that era of music that started like with Elvis, Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, and then you come to find out that Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, I'm trying to think, his other name, Willie Nelson,
Chris
Elvis.
Christopherson. These are the guys that brought me back to
Yeah.
country music. I kind of went away from country music for many years, but went back to it because of the Outlaws, and I love that outlaw music. It's what brought me back to country music, and I wish it was still alive. It was the poetry, and it was just, I don't know, just some good, honest, authentic. Your Waylon and Willie and the boys.
Well, you know what? I was going through YouTube the other night, and I was just sitting back, and I was listening to some Johnny Cash, and my dad was a big Johnny Cash fan, and Willie and the Boys and stuff like that. And I remember the Highwaymen, and I listened to a video of the Highwaymen, and it just kept on going, and it was like I was 2.5 hours of just going back on YouTube and listening to some of the great music. But
well, there was some great music, and the Highwaymen was certainly one of the great songs. I think Poncho and Lefty was another one of those great songs, and I just loved some of the the images of Guy Clark writing about two old men dying like desperados waiting for a train.
And a lot of people don't realize, but that's how Willie Nelson got his first start in movies, was that particular song that they turned into a movie. Did you remember
Yes,
that?
yes, and that was the mystique that kind of, the history of it, and the Highwaymen's actually a very, very interesting song about reincarnation.
Yeah, most definitely.
And I thought it opened a lot of people's spiritual horizons. There was a lot of stuff that the Catholic Church took out of the Bible. And there's still some references in the Bible to that, so we don't know Um, but I thought the song was incredibly intriguing. It made me think, and it made me think more than a lot of other songs have. Um, it, their work, the Outlaws had some work that was just I think very compelling, and it was compelling to me. And I was signed as an outlaw, and so the fact is, I always have had different influences in my music, and then I actually made what you might call an Americana CD about 13 years ago called the Last Wild Place Anthology. And in this January, Strictly Country, the board of Strictly Country Music and the board of the Spirit Awards um, voted it. They gave it their most prestigious uh, award for uh, best well-written uh, musical excellence and best well-written songs.
Oh, wow.
And it's very similar to. It has a lot of that sort of outlaw thing to it, although it's not real Western. It's although it did win when it first came out 13 years ago. That thing won. It went number one on the American Western Music Chart, and it went number one on the worldwide uh, country independent chart. But it wasn't really heard of because you can't get things out like big record companies can. But it is getting some critical acclaim, and then the new CD, which the new EP, Scarecrow, is also kind of similar. We just had a video come out on that, and I'm getting hundreds of responses on that video. And we haven't. I'm going to knock on wood, but we haven't had one bad response. It's very out there. It's very different video.
Awesome.
Uses a lot of images from NASA, from outer space, and it's just trippy. It's just really, and the song Scarecrow is about it's the title track of the EP. There are 4 songs on the EP, but the title track Scarecrow is my personal favorite, and it was a song that I wrote 13 years ago after I had a long marriage breakup, in a way that was a very great betrayal on many, many levels, and I had to recover from that, and part of the recovery was writing that song, but I couldn't sing it for years and years. Just could start singing it a couple of years ago, and it's out there, and I've had amazing things happen with that song. I'll be playing to a Western audience, or I have a large Western following, or a country audience, and in the middle of a show, though they've never heard the song before, they will give me a standing ovation, and that's happened 5 or 6 times. With very, very differing audiences. So I think it has an appeal. I couldn't tell you what kind of song it is. I could not tell you. It's kind of Appalachian sounding. I don't know. It's a kind of an up-tempo thing. People were asking me when I was trying to get the money to make the CD, because when you're independent, you have to finance your own thing. People would say, what kind of a song is it? Is it country, or is it folk, or is it rock and roll? I said, I cannot tell you. It's
Right.
really different. It's really different, but it's the music that Spirit put in me, and I am free now because I'm independent. I can record anything I want, and I can say what I want in any song, and that's really why I do music. I've done whole CDs called ones called things like Hard Times and Survivor, to give people the strength to. This is not an easy place. This earth is not an easy place. It's harder here.
Right.
This is we have a lot of challenges. We come in to have challenges, and
Right.
the challenges are what make us grow spiritually. But we need encouragement, and that is why I do music. That is why I've always done music. I never had the whole desire for this, that sparkly star big thing. That was really that. I was so glad I got a record deal, because at least it has allowed me to work my entire life doing what I love, playing music, and I still am. And we have a lot of great Christmas shows coming up. The new video is doing really well. We got awards. That 13-year-old CD called Last Wild Place Anthology just won some of the most prestigious awards that you could ever ask for. And also we have a Christmas song that was a Christmas song, Spirit Awards, and the Strictly Country magazine called it the best Christmas song of 2019, and you can see it for free if you go to YouTube and look at Carl the Christmas dog. We adopted this great big dog who
Right.
ate Christmas. He ate Christmas one year, so it's
Oh,
a story of.
wow.
It was a story of the devastation, but the video is really funny, and we had a blast making this video. And Carl is in the video. You can actually see Carl. Your kids will love Carl the Christmas Dog. And now there's a Carl the Christmas Dog book, and we have a Carl the Christmas Dog CD, and we're having a lot of fun with Carl. Of course, there's no living with him anymore because his head, which was always big, got even bigger. And by the time you have to put the cape on and the crystal bowl, it's really, he's really sort of,
Well,
he's
some
really.
some of the best times that you have are with your pets. and
Oh,
we have three. We have a rescue that lives with us. Her name is Roxy, and then I always tell everybody, I said I've got two Chihuahuas and a ferocious Pomeranian, and our Pomeranian's what they call a party pom. She's black and white, and
oh,
she when she goes through the house strutting, and she thinks it's all about her. And you mention her name, and buddy, her ears pops up, and here she comes strutting in the room, and she's something else. But tell us a little bit.
dogs are the best people on earth.
Oh,
I just want you to.
yes, they are.
Dogs don't lie about love.
So this new Charlie the Christmas story is now out on YouTube. You can catch it anytime.
We actually put it out last year, but it won the award for this year, 2019's Christmas. Well, it was last Christmas, the Christmas best Christmas song of 2019, and it's called Carl, the Christmas Dog, and his name is Carl the Dog. He came from the pound with the name Carl the Dog.
Oh, wow.
So Carl the dog lives with me, but there's really no living with him now. Between the ascot and really.
His tours and his manager and all that, I can imagine.
Oh yes, you can't even get close to him anymore. It's really hard to get an interview.
The paparazzi's out. When I do some interviews from time to time, I've got my board set up to where I go, oh, did you bring the paparazzi? And I'll have the camera sound, and I can imagine him and stuff. Well, do you got any new projects that you're working on that's going to be coming out soon?
Well, the Scarecrow is new. It just came out in January.
Okay.
And it's a 4-song EP, and we are doing. We're just getting ready to do a bunch of blogs and a website with a company called Red Giant from New York, and we're getting a lot of response from the new video, and I'm not sure that it's out on YouTube yet. They wanted to release it some exclusively a few places before we actually put it out on YouTube, but it may be out on YouTube. It's called Lacy J. Dalton Scarecrow, and it's really fun. It's a really different video, really really different. I've never seen anything quite like it, and its song is different too. So it's interesting. I think some of your folks might enjoy hearing it. It's not what you'd call traditional country, but my traditional country people are just loving it.
Well, the thing about traditional country, and it's like what you're saying earlier. We were I was talking with some friends that country music's not what it was in the '60s and the '70s. The days of Conway Twitty, Roletta Lynn, George Jones, Tammy Wynette, um, some of the great like Tanya Tucker, Dolly Parton. That country's kind of gone, and y'all are still here. We know the pioneers of the country stuff, but the country, and it's like I said something. When Aerosmith, the lead man for Aerosmith, comes out and cuts a country album, you're going, wow. And some of the great rock and roll people that were back in the '70s and the '80s comes out and cuts a country album. You're going, okay, where's the country music like Garth Brooks? Where's that music?
Well, I think there's a lot of traditional country music around. There are a lot of secondary stations that actually play a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that they're much more popular than mainstream radio thinks they are. I have a friend, Dee Gregory, who had the second largest station here in Reno. It was out in Fallon, and it was called K-Hog Radio. And it really... Did you know K-Hog?
I used to listen to Art Bell one of y'all's
Oh
very
yeah, well, Art was out here in Nevada. I
yeah.
loved his show. We spent, when you're on a tour bus and you're up late at night,
Hmm.
that was the fun thing to listen to was
I
Art Bell. And my new song, Scarecrow in the video, it would have been good on Art Bell.
Yeah. Oh, well, the I used to listen to Art Bell, and when I first I my full time job is working security in hospitals, and I work for a company out here in our area. And late at night, when I used to work at the guardhouses and stuff like that, while I was doing my radio stuff in the early days, I would listen to Art Bell. And Art Bell was kind of one of the images that when I first wanted to do radio, I wanted to do something like Art Bell, coming from the mountains of North Georgia and and stuff, and get one of those cool songs that he had. But the
How fun! How
and
fun! Art Bell was fun. I mean, you'd be talking about Bigfoot, and then you'd be talking about, real witches and stuff. I mean, it was kind of UFO stuff, and it was. I really enjoyed that. I I tell you, a lot of times it would keep you awake. I would sit up with the drivers in the front of the bus to keep them awake because everybody I loved was on that bus. And it's hard when you're doing a 12-hour run or 7-hour run.
he
They'd stop and sleep for a while, but it's a grind out there on the road. And I was on the road quite a lot. Now I still am. I had a big summer this year. We spent a lot of time out in Michigan doing shows for police and mounted posses and first responders of all kinds. I've done an awful lot of work with the veterans, and
awesome.
I love our veterans, and I really have a tremendous respect for anybody, especially our combat veterans.
Well,
That's just got to be so hard to
well
live with.
we're doing a special right now. It's out on our rock station that we have. It's WTEK, and we're doing a thing with James Marvell. And James is working with a group of people down at Punta Gorda, Florida, that they're going to give back to the veterans of Vietnam. And
Oh,
we're
then of all the vets that have had the hardest time, those guys really had it hard. They had
oh
it rough
yeah,
when they came home. It's no wonder. Do you know there are almost as many? A lot of those vets have committed suicide.
oh yeah. I've heard. Matter of fact, I used to work with a gentleman that had Agent Orange, and he was so when we used to work together, we used to work at the water plant together, and I remember him, we sitting there and him all the time, how paranoid he was, and he was a great guy, but he was just always he says don't never trust nobody. The government's going to do this stuff to you and all this and he was the one.
Well, it might be good advice.
And
I have to tell you, I've had two Vietnam veteran boyfriends, and the last one was a Lakota Indian from Standing Rock Reservation, and he had been a ranger in Vietnam, but he lost the left temporal lobe of his brain. He had his throat shot out, a
ouch.
knee shot off, one lung and one kidney. But he was in incredible physical shape because he was an athlete,
Hmm.
and he actually, even after all those injuries, he was still after he came back from Vietnam was a saddle bronc rider for the army
Right.
and won a lot of buckles, and he has every medal that you could ever imagine. But he had Agent Orange, and finally, this is years later, he finally is getting compensation. But he would have these sores on his leg that they just didn't go away. They had made a special cream that he could get that would actually help it. But that is some awful stuff that chemical weapons and stuff like Agent Orange. It's just terrible that that's even exists in this world and that people actually use it against one another.
It's
We have so much, there's so much trouble in this world, and I don't know how anybody makes it without believing in a higher power.
amen.
Whatever they call that and however they come to it, whatever that is truly I think that's the only way we really can survive. A lot of people don't believe in anything, and I don't know how they do it. I truly don't. I think this place is has some pretty rough challenges. You know, we lose people we love, we lose our pets that we love. We come back from war all banged up and messed up, and you know, there's only one help from that. You know, stay open to a higher power, and that is that's in a lot of my music.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, we have a Southern Gospel and Christian Country radio station, and we're all the time picking people up uh, to Jesus Christ and telling them how great if you need it. We're here. We got a prayer line that stays open 24/7. It's on my cell phone and it belongs to
Oh,
God.
that's great.
So
That's
we're
wonderful.
always working on it. Well, I don't want to keep you anymore because I know you're, and it's been great talking to you, Miss Dalton. Is there anything up on the horizon, any major concerts that are coming
Well,
up?
we have a whole bunch of Christmas concerts coming up. We've
Okay.
got one at the Black Oak Casino. We've got one at the Sutter Creek Theater coming up. We've got one at the famous Red Dog Saloon up
Oh,
in Virginia City, and down in June Lake at Mammoth. We're going to be there Christmas Eve at June Lake, which is probably the most beautiful place you could ever imagine to be at Christmas. And my family's going to come down. We're going to do a show and have Christmas dinner the next day together. And I'm really looking forward to all that. And I just want to wish all you and all your listeners very, very happy holidays. You know, may they be peaceful. May they be a blessing to you and your families, and may you be
thank
able
you.
to be with your families over the holidays if you love them, and mostly we do. They're our family, you know. So, uh, but the thing is, I also want to wish everybody a very happy and peaceful and prosperous 2020.
And we want to wish you happy holidays. As you know, the Thanksgiving was just hours away from us, and y'all are getting fixing. Are y'all getting part of that winter blast that's coming through?
We are. We're supposed to get it this afternoon, and I have to. I'm going to ask you to put me on your prayer line because
We will.
dog, my dear old dog, passed away, and my other dog is so lonesome. And I'm going down today to try to find a playmate for my dog at the local shelter. Would you pray that I find one that doesn't eat the house like Carl the dog did?
We definitely will. Miss Dalton,
Thank you.
it's been a pleasure, and like to have you back on in the near future where we can talk about some stuff with the country stuff as we get ready to launch it, and we'll be in touch with you.
All right, Chucky. You have yourselves a great holiday, and I hope to talk to you soon.
You too, Miss Dalton. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
All right. You have a great day.
You too. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
And that was Miss Lacy J. Dalton here on the Chuck Bryant Show, and we got into some great comments and stuff out there. And listen, uh, we do Christian country, we do country music, we do a lot of good interviews with a lot of people in the music realm, and it's great that we had Miss Dalton on today. Hang on just one second. You know how phones get after you've been using them, and they cut them off. But anyway, like to thank you for being a part of this, and this is the Chuck Bryant Show live on WOTG Radio. Wow, old time gospel.